Evening. Here's one that happened to me yesterday, which I think is quite interesting and telling. See what you think. So I work in the marine industry, and there's a couple of companies that I've been following for a while in connection with the agenda to push net zero in the shipping industry. And we're talking new fuels and new ways of operating and new types of ships, but it's mainly new fuels requiring modifications, different infrastructure, battery powered ferries, methanol as a fuel, ammonia as a fuel, hydrogen as a fuel, low sulfur fuel, you name it. It goes on and on. It's a new one every week. So I have been just gently raising my head above the parapet in order to look for allies in demanding a bit of sanity back in this respect. Now, I'm one small guy in a huge, great big market up against, a UN agency at the centre of it. But what was interesting is that there was a vote at the UN agency that covers the ships and the shipping a couple of months ago, and it didn't go through. This was to adopt the net zero framework, and it didn't go through. It didn't go through because the Trump administration was very vocal against it, and enough shipping operators sided with them to delay any vote on its adoption and implementation by at least a year. So the debate will come back in a year's time. The war on net zero has not been won, but one of the battles has been at the very least delayed. So I've been watching out for the companies. There's a very short list of companies that dare to stand up against this, let alone publicly. But there are some, and a letter from them helped to swing that vote. So I got in touch with an old contact at one of these companies, and we had a conversation yesterday. So I found they were one of the signatories of a letter pushing back the net zero vote. And I only found out yesterday before the call, they're also still shipping Russian gas to the EU for all this, the EU's cutlass rattling on Russia. They're still buying Russian gas, even after Nord Stream got blown up by no one. So I had lined up a conversation, and I'd said that I was interested in the net zero, move and their position on net zero. So I had this call yesterday with a guy that I haven't spoken to for about 5 years. Lined up a Teams meeting. He accepted it. He knew it was coming, so we had a call. And it sounded like, he works for a petrochemicals and a fossil fuel shipping company. So the fact that there seemed to be a bit of common ground on the net zero framework didn't come as a great surprise, and I'd already said that was what I wanted to talk about. But I then mentioned the Russian connection, and he went a bit quiet. It's no secret that the company is involved, but clearly it's something that he wasn't particularly keen to talk about it. I used to work for a Russian company. I like Russia and the Russians. I've got no issue with them, and I said I don't particularly have a problem. I'm sick of sanctions being used as economic weapons, and or as political weapons rather, and so I've got no particular issue with them shipping Russian gas. So I said I'm interested though in the net zero. Is that who in the company would be driving that one? Could you who should I contact in order to start a conversation? So he said he would have a look at that. We left it there. So imagine my surprise when a little bit later on, I get this message through WhatsApp, which is how we'd been communicating up until then. I couldn't reply properly since you called me in my workplace. Yeah, workers agreed, yes. I had HR literally sitting behind me, and I thought the call would be business orientated. Well, it was business orientated, actually. To be pro-Russian after all the acts of aggression they have committed against Ukrainian civilians is astounding. Russia is the root cause of this war and the economic problems that have followed. No one else. Good luck to you. Delete my number and do not contact me again. So I wasn't expecting that one. But this is what I'm finding more frequently nowadays. As soon as the prevailing narrative is challenged, those subscribing to it just shut down on the spot, get nasty, disappear off, throw their toys out the pram and flamp off into the distance. So I'm genuinely surprised at that. I mean, there's Trump derangement syndrome, and then there's Putin derangement syndrome, which is not totally unrelated, perhaps. So I thought you might be interested in my response. My response went like this: Dear so-and-so, I've taken your extraordinary follow-up to our chat. I've taken the time to write the following. I'd ask you, as a parting courtesy, to take the time to read it. Your absolute intolerance of any point of view other than the prevailing mainstream narrative is a perfect example of why debate is almost non-existent nowadays. That someone taking an income, at least in part, from the shipping of Russian gas should hold such a view is pretty bizarre. If that is also the position of your work peers, then what an unresolved conflict the organisation is living with. That anyone with the world's news at their fingertips should hold such a badly informed and monochrome position is frankly embarrassing. But to be so unable to accept that other views exist, let alone debate them, worrying. Goodbye and good luck resolving your convoluted moral position. So that was my kind of introduction. This is what I had previously sent and he'd ignored on WhatsApp, so I sent it by email. Sod it. Wow. Okay. If I put you in an awkward position, it was, of course, unintentional. However, the call was to do with work, as my interest was in your company's position, and still is. I have encountered a few people recently with views as forthright as yours, and none of them were able to make a case beyond what the BBC has been spinning, or even knew the basic background. I don't suppose I'll get to find out whether or not you buck that trend, but the inability or refusal to debate beyond Russia man bad you all have in common is deeply unimpressive. I didn't say I was pro-Russia so much as anti-war, and the one in question would have been over long ago, and hundreds of thousands of people would still be alive if the West hadn't got involved in something that I, and many like me, feel has nothing to do with us. After Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Libya, how anyone can think the West has a scrap of moral high ground from which to judge Russia's behaviour, I do not know. Ukraine is not in NATO, simple as that. Or should NATO pile in on every war worldwide? See, this logic falls down immediately. Your binary view seemingly ignores such key facts as NATO's endless expansionism since undertaking not to move 1 inch to the east, Jim Baker to Gorbachev in 91, and the fact that the Kiev regime was bombing its own people in the east for a decade leading up to the current conflict, estimated 15,000 dead. Unlike Kiev and the West, the East is historically, ethnically Russian, speaks Russian, is Russian Orthodox, and votes pro-Russia every time it has the chance. Ukraine is 2 countries glued together. See the map. Imagine how many lives would have been saved if that reality had been accepted 5 years ago. Then there was the $5 billion USAID-funded NATO-backed coup and the overthrow of a democratically elected pro-Russian regime in favour of one that was pro-NATO. Victoria Nuland is on tape discussing who the next president would be. Moscow had always said Ukraine was the ultimate red line, and its eventual reaction to NATO provocation was long predicted on both sides of the Atlantic. See Professor John Mearsheimer for a couple of decades' worth of warnings. At least let's not pretend that what Russia did was in any way unprovoked. It's Kiev that has banned elections, languages, non-state media stations and religions, not Moscow. If you didn't know that, then fact-check me by all means. In my opinion, NATO has yet again proven itself to be a bad actor, stirring up a regional conflict to keep the money presses running, the arms stocks high, and the money-laundered kickbacks to Congress flowing in, and risking World War III into the bargain. Fortunately, the web of corruption that is Zelensky's Ukraine is now unraveling, and I hope the whole toxic mess is now exposed, Biden's, Burisma, and all. I doubt Zelensky will be there much longer. The only question is whether he can escape before he's lynched by those who have watched their country destroyed and sold out to BlackRock, their sons conscripted and killed. Ukraine will be left in tatters for nothing, and corporate Western fortunes will be made, as they were in Iraq and Afghanistan, rebuilding. There's a different way of viewing this situation, and the mainstream media does their best to make sure we never hear it. One has to dig deeper. I will, of course, respect your strange wish, but I hope you might spare 10 minutes for the parting gift of this extraordinary insight from someone who was in the room for a lot of the Ukraine negotiations, as he was for other ex-communist bloc countries while they gained their independence. Professor Jeffrey Sachs. From your comments, anyone would think I was the one earning a living from shipping Russian gas. Oh, the irony. I'm at peace knowing that whatever anyone thinks of my views, at least I'm not a total hypocrite. Deleting your contacts now and wishing you well for the future. So, I think this is part of a wider trend, and it just seems to me that those who follow the narrative fed to them by the mainstream media are less and less able or prepared to debate and just try and shut down the conversation on the spot and run away. I think at the very least, debate is key to resolving issues, and the inability to do it guarantees that we see, increased numbers of very bad outcomes in the world. Whatever level you're talking about, debate is a positive thing, isn't it? So I thought that was quite interesting. Hope you did, and I've got a couple more coming up. So see you again. Cheers.